I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, campaigns and cleanup. As both candidates head to the swing state of North Carolina, they also address controversial comments from President Biden. Devastation in Spain. Dozens are dead in flash floods in one of the Catholic country's worst natural disasters in years. Fighting for the faithful. A closer look at why a religious freedom case could be heading to the Supreme Court. Plus, just to confirm, Pope Francis has a reminder for the faithful about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, 6 days out from Election Day, and we begin on the campaign trail. Vice President Kamala Harris is responding to some controversial remarks made by President Joe Biden that ignited a lot of blowback. Many say those remarks disparaged Donald Trump's supporters, and they came at a time when voters are making up their minds. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
That's right, Tracy. President Joe Biden made the comments last night. It was during a campaign call. Republicans pounced, saying he was denigrating Trump supporters. On social media, President Biden posted a clarification about what he says he meant to say.
President Joe Biden causes controversy during his response to a recent Trump campaign event where a comedian made a joke.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
President Biden tried to clarify his comments on social media, writing, "His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say." The official transcript also raised questions when the White House added an apostrophe to the word supporters, implying it was only directed at one person instead of all of Trump's backers. Vice President Kamala Harris distanced herself from Biden's remark.
Listen, I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear, I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for.
Harris also praised her rally last night near the White House. It was by far her largest campaign crowd. In her speech, she offered voters a different path forward if they send her to the Oval Office, and also promising,
"We are not going back, because we also know Donald Trump would deliver tax cuts to his billionaire donors. I will deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class."
Meanwhile, on the campaign trail today, Trump holding a rally in North Carolina.
My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans. You just can't.
And in the very same state, Harris asked supporters,
Now, regarding President Biden's controversial comments, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters that the president wanted to clarify he was not calling Trump supporters garbage and instead was referring to the comedian and what he said. Separately, for keeping score at home, Donald Trump and Vice President Harris crisscrossing several swing states today. Harris delivering remarks in Madison, Wisconsin later tonight. And former President Trump will be in Green Bay, Wisconsin tonight. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
The Supreme Court grants an emergency appeal to the state of Virginia, allowing officials to resume removing those suspected of being non-citizens from the voter registration rolls. The justice's decision effectively blocked a federal judge's ruling that put the plan on hold and required the state to restore 1,600 voters. The issue stems from the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, which bars systematic removals 90 days prior to an election. On August 7th of this year, Virginia's governor signed the executive order authorizing the program exactly 90 days before November 5th. The Justice Department and advocacy groups sued the state of Virginia earlier this month. A new report finds pro-abortion groups are outspending pro-lifers by a ratio of 6-to-1 when it comes to abortion amendments on state ballots. The abortion groups have spent a total of $160 million. The analysis comes from campaign finance data compiled by a watchdog group. Most of the money is going to support Amendment 4 in Florida. The total dollars spent on advertising both for and against the proposed amendment is about the same as is being spent in Florida's U.S. Senate race. While control of the U.S. Senate is going right through the state of Texas, where incumbent Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic challenger Congressman Colin Allred are well within the margin of error. That is according to the latest polls. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has the latest and joins us now with more. Eric.
Good evening, Tracy. For decades, Texas has long been a red state, but Democrats have been saying for years that the Lone Star State will soon become blue, but so far it has not. Texas actually is also considered a swing state for the presidency, and the abortion issue is front and center.
People are genuinely and deeply pro-life. People are genuinely and deeply pro-choice, and there are all sorts of positions in between. I agree with the United States Supreme Court that under our Constitution, the way we resolve questions like that, questions on which we have real and genuine disagreements, is at the ballot box.
Cruz's challenger, Congressman Colin Allred, aims to become the first Democrat to win a U.S. Senate race in Texas since 1988. Allred says he supports codifying Roe v. Wade and adds Cruz's beliefs are out of touch with Americans.
It's not pro-life to deny women care so long that they can't have children anymore. It's not pro-life to force a victim of rape to carry their rapist's baby. It's not pro-life that our maternal mortality rate has skyrocketed up by 56%. That's not pro-life, Senator.
Right now, polling suggests Cruz has a slim 2-point lead over Allred, 49% to 47%. In the last 6 years, Texas has seen more than 2.5 million new registered voters. Some are Republicans leaving states like California and New York, but some are younger progressive and moderate voters. Another issue playing a role in the election, the border crisis. Recently, the Texas Attorney General's office accused Catholic organizations like Catholic Charities of aiding illegal migration. The Bishop of El Paso says they are simply doing the work of Jesus.
These are people who have been processed by the Border Patrol, released to us directly. And so we're trying to keep them out of the hands of people who would abuse them. To call those who do this work themselves traffickers is a malicious lie.
Texas is also considered a swing state for the presidency. Both former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris have campaigned in the state, and both sides have received millions of dollars from outside sources. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, thanks to consumer spending, the U.S. economy grew at a 2.8% annual rate last quarter. The new report from the Commerce Department also says inflation rose at a 1.5% pace last quarter, which is the lowest figure in more than 4 years. At the same time, the jobs market has lost momentum. The number of openings fell to its lowest level since January of 2021. All right, now to the UK, where the Treasury announces a tax hike of £40 billion or $52 billion.
Because that is the only way to improve living standards. And the only way to drive economic growth is to invest, invest, invest.
In the first budget presented by the Labour Party since returning to power, Treasury Chief Rachel Reeves blames the huge hike on the previous Conservative government. British people will also see a rise in so-called employer national insurance contributions, but small businesses may not be affected. And turning now to the Middle East, the new chief of the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah says that the war with Israel will continue until acceptable ceasefire terms are reached.
نحن مستمرون في التصدي للعدوان.
This comes as the Israel-Hezbollah conflict continues to widen as Israel issues the first citywide evacuation order in East Lebanon. Critics say the State Department has failed to act upon hundreds of reports that U.S.-supplied weapons are responsible for civilian deaths in Gaza. An official says the majority of these cases are pending. Dozens of people are dead after rainstorms in Spain caused massive flooding. Cars were swept away and piled up, and streets turned into rivers. You can see it right there in what is being labeled as the worst natural disaster to hit the majority Catholic country. The death toll is expected to rise. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a fight for education, how Jewish families will regain access to funds from its special education programs after a court ruling. tonight, we want to highlight two cases. One may send the religious freedom issue back to the Supreme Court. The other involves fighting for access to education funds for Jewish children with special needs.
You hear about special needs funding in public schools, and you just assume that it would be available to a private school too. Or I guess, in fact, in this case, it is available in private school, but it's just not available to private religious schools.
At a California court this week, Jewish parents won the right to nominate a religious school as the best option for their child with disabilities. At the heart of this challenge are federal funds. California's educational bureaucracy is trying to keep that money from schools labeled sectarian or religious private schools. Federal money that goes to individual state departments of education is meant to provide disability services for those who cannot be served in public schools. And these parents argue that a school that also maintains their religious tradition will be the best place for their child. And Mark Rienzi, president of the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, joins us now to unpack this week's decision. Mark, good to be with you. So didn't a Supreme Court ruling in 2022 find religious discrimination in state-level programs to be against the law? And if so, why did these Jewish parents have to go to court in California?
Yeah, well, they shouldn't have to go to court because you're exactly right. The Supreme Court has been crystal clear that states can't exclude religious schools from equal participation in public programs. The unfortunate fact is that many state governments and some courts have been resistant to the clear requirements of the Constitution. And in this case, California, despite that clear constitutional law, had tried to exclude religious families of special needs kids from participating in a federal program.
Yeah, and it being so clear, do you think this is going to head to the Supreme Court?
I don't know. What I know is that this is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which historically hasn't always been the greatest when it comes to religious liberty. But it's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the decision was made by 3 judges, one appointed by President Clinton, one appointed by President Obama, one appointed by President Trump. So not 3 people you'd normally think agree on everything. But they said squarely, this is unconstitutional. California can't do it. If California is smart, they'll just quit. I don't know if they're smart enough to quit.
Yeah, Mark, I know there's another case that your firm is representing and defending some goat-herding nuns in the Diocese of Albany, New York. That was appealed to the Supreme Court this week. Many of our viewers are familiar with the Little Sisters of the Poor case and how they famously won protections from the Supreme Court 3 times from the mandate forcing them to pay for employee abortions. But they may not be familiar with this newest case. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you remember the federal contraceptive mandate forcing employers to provide contraceptives, and that's the one that the Little Sisters had to fight in court for so long. This is a New York state mandate, and they go one step worse than the feds to say we're not just going to require you to buy contraceptives for your employees, we're going to require you to buy them surgical abortions on your health plans. And the case has been going on for a decade in the New York courts. And unfortunately, the New York courts have not taken the message from the Supreme Court about religious liberty. And the New York courts have repeatedly said, tough luck, the government can force you to buy abortions. And so this case is at the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to enforce the Constitution and tell New York the same thing they told the feds over and over again about the Little Sisters, which is the government can't force religious people and religious organizations to provide these things against their will. It's a simple question, but it's only coming up because, again, there's a recalcitrant state in New York and a recalcitrant state court system in New York that have refused to apply the Constitution the right way.
Mark, what else should we know about this case?
Well, it's been to the Supreme Court once before. So 3 years ago, when we had the Fulton case over Catholic Charities being able to do foster care and adoption work, this case was at the Supreme Court. 3 justices wanted to take it right then, but the majority ended up sending it back to ask the New York courts to try to get it right in light of the recent big wins for religious liberty at the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, 3 years later, the New York courts are basically thumbing their nose at the Supremes, much like the California authorities are in the other case. They're just saying, we're going to resist, we're going to refuse. And so I think it's just really important for the Supreme Court to take cases like this and say, we meant what we said, you have to respect religious liberty. This is actually how we all get along in a diverse society, is the government respecting religious liberty. So I hope the Supremes will take the case and send the right message to New York that they're not allowed to do this.
Mark, before I let you go, any final thoughts?
Religious liberty remains supremely important. It will stay super important no matter who wins the election. This is a time of great division in the country, and it's a time when we need religion and we need our religious institutions, and therefore we need really strong protection for religious liberty.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on and shaking this all out for us. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you. You too.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, call to action. A bishop in Spokane is speaking out after a report details the surprising number of Catholic hospitals providing transgender treatments to children. Plus, new developments in the Vatican's financial scandal involving a once high-ranking cardinal. In California says that it has agreed to provide abortions in cases of medical emergencies. Last month, the state attorney general sued Providence St. Joseph Hospital in Eureka. The suit alleged that the hospital illegally refused to abort the child of a woman who was 15 weeks pregnant and bleeding. A church leader in the United States is calling for a special meeting of the USCCB. He wants the bishops to discuss a recent report that found numerous Catholic hospitals have provided gender identity surgeries and treatments for minors. Bishop Thomas Daly of Spokane, Washington, says that it is time to confront the role being played by Catholic hospitals in immoral procedures on children. His comments come after a medical watchdog group published a database of public hospital records regarding transgender surgeries. It catalogs around 14,000 sex change-related treatments for patients under the age of 17. And among the public hospitals providing the so-called care, nearly 150 were Catholic hospitals. All right, we turn now to Bishop Thomas Daly from the Diocese of Spokane, Washington. Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. What was your reaction when you first saw the report on the number of transgender surgeries and treatments for minors, and then when you saw how many Catholic hospitals were doing them? What did you think?
As I mentioned in an earlier interview, I was appalled but not surprised. And I say that I'm glad it's not in my geographic boundary of the diocese, but as you know, so many of these Catholic healthcare systems extend beyond diocesan boundaries. And I was with my Vicar General, Father Darren Cardinal, and a priest of the diocese who works with me in healthcare, Father Triste. And we had a conversation with an ethicist and for a Catholic healthcare system. And the question was raised in frustration by Father Cardinal, then why don't you do these surgeries? Why don't you assist in this way? And he said, with a pause, because we don't have the doctors. And my response was, the answer I hoped you would have given me is, we don't do this because we are Catholic hospitals. And that just shows you the kind of the climate we're in. I would call this, paraphrasing St. John Paul II when he spoke about misplaced compassion. So again, appalled but not surprised.
It's really shocking, actually. I know you mentioned you're calling for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops to address this. What's been the response so far?
Well, I think as we determine, I sit on an administrative committee because of being chair of Catholic education, but the agenda is pretty set and it's packed. But there will be opportunities, I think, in region and other areas, and we can raise this, and hopefully at another gathering, it can be addressed. I don't think it's not something that is going to go away, and so there is certainly a factor of time. But I know that the Holy See and the Bishops' Conference are looking to specifically address this as a way to help faithful Catholic hospitals and Catholic schools and other institutions to address this.
Yesterday, we reported that the Archbishop Dennis Schnurr in Cincinnati is ending the Archdiocese's relationship with the Girl Scouts because he says the organization promotes a false and harmful view of sex and gender. Do you think that we're going to start to see more church leaders, speaking out on issues like this?
Yes, and I think studies done in Europe that the surgery done on minors, that the harm and stepping away from that, I think we're seeing comments that Pope Francis has made. The Catholic Medical Association has been very clear on this. The National Catholic Bioethics Center, again, they've been clear. The old one, follow the science. Okay, well, this is the science. And one of the concerns that was raised by another bishop in a conversation I had with him, he goes, I wonder how much of this is about money, because for an individual who undergoes a surgery, it's not a surgery and that's over. It is ongoing, everything from the hormones to keeping the surgery. It can't be just one thing. So the motives behind this, I think we need to also look at. So I would think that the bishops now, in our role as teachers, with the scientific background, will become more forthright and are calling this out and saying it has no place in Catholic health.
Your Excellency, thank you for coming on. Thank you for speaking out and for everything that you do. God bless you.
All right, thank you. God bless.
Well, an unexpected interview aired on Belgian TV last week discussing a Vatican financial scandal and trial. It is a story our team has been following very closely since the summer of 2019. EWTN News foreign correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Cardinal Angelo Betu, the once high-ranking cardinal who was found guilty last December in a Vatican court of embezzlement and fraud, of losing the Vatican hundreds of millions of euros in a London property investment, of paying hundreds of thousands of euros to a woman for what he called security consultancy, and for sending money to a charity run by his brother, has spoken out in a rare interview for the Belgian TV network VRT. Angelo Betu recounts the moment Pope Francis took him aside here at the Vatican and confronted him for sending money to his brother.
Sì, le devo dire una cosa non molto bella. Lei è accusato di peculato. Come di peculato? Sì, lei ha trasferito dei soldi dell'obolo di San Pietro alla sua diocesi, però questi soldi sono andati nelle tasche di suo fratello.
His brother also features in the documentary and is seen here sitting beside him in the car. Cardinal Angelo Betu has always maintained his innocence, and in this interview explains that he sent the money to his brother's charity in Sardinia to help a local bakery.
Se in diocesi ho mandato 25.000 euro. Quei 25.000 euro servivano a concludere il lavoro di ripristino di un forno. Io ho voluto aiutare in diocesi una cooperativa della diocesi, cooperativa della Caritas, di cui è presidente mio fratello.
On the issue of the investment into the London property, Cardinal Betu claims he was given bad financial information and believed the investment was always a good one. On the controversial issue of where that money came from, where he took the money from to put into the investment, namely Peter's Pence, which is a collection of donations gathered from faithful from all over the world, Betu claims even the Pope had told him it was wise to invest it.
Era un fondo di 600 milioni. E quindi questi 600 milioni li vuoi lasciare sotto il cassetto o bisogna moltiplicarli? Il Papa stesso ha detto che è da stupidi non investire.
Now, it's been much publicised, the work that Cardinal George Pell and the Financial Auditor General Libero Malone were doing at the Vatican to try and stamp out corruption and bring about financial reform. Cardinal Pell passed away 2 years ago, but stated in interviews that he was specifically looking into accounts controlled by Cardinal Betu, describing them as murky. And Libero Malone, the former Auditor General, he recently told EWTN in an interview that he was coming up against severe resistance when trying to audit Betu's accounts after noticing suspicious discrepancies. And in this documentary, Cardinal Betu addresses this.
Col Cardinal Pell abbiamo avuto sì un periodo di contrasti, ma il mio contrasto derivava non perché mi volevo opporre alle riforme, ma perché Cardinal Pell voleva imporre regole che ancora non erano regole, come il voler controllare i conti della Segreteria di Stato. Per controllare i conti della Segreteria di Stato deve avere un'autorizzazione specifica del Papa. Mai è venuta.
At the Vatican in Rome, Colin Flynn for EWTN News Nightly.
And to see more, you can watch Colin's full report on EWTN's YouTube page. EWTN News reached out to the Vatican Communications Office, but as of yet, has not received comment from them. Well, finally tonight, Pope Francis reminds the faithful that the sacrament of confirmation is a beginning, not an end.
È il sacramento dell'addio, perché una volta che I giovani la fanno se ne vanno.
In his Wednesday address at the Vatican, the Holy Father marveled that in the sacrament of confirmation, young people encounter the Holy Spirit. And he stressed that confirmation is a gift of God and a milestone, adding that the gifts of the Holy Spirit are something that we can use every day for ourselves and others. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.